So really, I am hoping that we get some top quality gaming from two players that we haven't seen too much of more recently. I think Kasva featured recently on the channel, but Kasva has started to sink a little bit down to the 60-70 range on the ELO leaderboards. Meanwhile, the other person we're seeing here, first of all on the screen, is Magic. Magic, who is a pro player from less played, less frequent at Age of Empires, but very talented nonetheless. We saw him in that hour-and-a-half long game, I believe, against GUA. Quite a skilled player, but has been sinking on the leaderboards. I think he's currently down in about the 200s range. So he's fallen out of the top 100 on the ELO. And that's a bit rough to see. But I'm wondering if he's got a smurf, because he only has 109 games played so far with a 60% win rate. So still in the positives in terms of percentage of wins. But yeah, not that many games when you consider how long the game's now been out. We've got plenty of people who their accounts are on over 400 games. In fact, we've got some people who they've got like one account on 300 and one on 300, right? Which is kind of nuts. I think Kasva is one of those examples of a player that's been slamming it hard. I mean, if we look, Kasva, okay, 66 on the other account that he has, and this one is now up at 400. So he's really putting in the hours. And then also he has the Bitcoin account, which has 53. So he's over 500 games total. Definitely been grinding it. But they're both going to be playing France. And this should be an interesting one, because I feel like I actually haven't seen much France since the patch dropped. I don't know if a lot of players are just avoiding it because they feel it's figured out, right? Like, not that much changed, not that much has changed about how you play them. Or it's just they're kind of bored of it and it still feels too strong and it kind of feels cheesy a little bit. Because despite the nerfs to cavalry directly and indirectly, France doesn't really seem to care because their economy side is still very strong, right? You still have this quicker production rate on villages. You still get the cheaper tech as well. And you still have that fantastic timing around Castle Age where you can have a composition force of both knights and crossbowmen if you want, right? Something we'll probably start to see a little bit of deviation from, considering the direct nerfs to cavalry in regards to their interaction with spears, now just being better counted out by them and crossbows. I might expect to see these French players start to change the build order to include barracks by Castle Age and just think about men-at-arms as a potential way of going with a kind of slow-moving army. But, I'm getting ahead of myself, right? We're only in Dark Age right now. We'll see how they open up. Right now, Kasva already ahead of Magic by the looks of it. Yeah. Wait, what happened here? Okay, that's why. I was about to say, Magic looks a bit wonky here, but it's because he queued up so many villages. His food count wasn't looking right. Yeah, there you go. He fixes it himself now. He's like, oh, whoops. I seem to have clicked the button too many times. But yeah, Kasva is going to beat him to the Fuel Age, and they are going to School of Cavalry. I expect both of them to. I think the only time that I ever expect to see the Chamber of Commerce for the French, which for those who don't know, is just a better marketplace for French players. The only time I really ever expect to see that built is probably in team games. Possibly on, say, something like Boulder Bay, but even then I still think like the School of Cavalry is way too good to pass up, right? Chamber of Commerce just doesn't offer enough. And I've talked about this so many times, it feels like. Maybe it's not that many times, it just feels like it is, because it's always the same statement. Like, my opinion hasn't changed on it, which is that when it comes to trade is only viable late game. That's my kind of my twist, my take. Outside of maybe Mongols, I feel like if you're engaging with trade, and here's what I mean by it, like, you can actually, yeah, you can get a few trade caravans early on, fine. But the reality is, like, it's a long-term investment, right? Where it starts to find its true value is when everything gets drained on the map. And if you have something else, alternative, that you can invest your resources in to an expansion, a small military force to harass eco, these type of things, it actually outweighs the value of going for the trade. Because one of the big things to consider is, like, if I could invest this wood and gold into getting a few units out and pressuring my opponent, not only am I going to get a clear eco advantage there, but then I can just prioritize my village account, which only costs food, on getting me those resources, right? And taking away those finite amount of resources on the map in those more aggressive locations off the back of the military advantage I have. And by doing that, I then also cripple my opponent. I think that's kind of the teeter-totter right now. Like, the whole concept of marketplaces is cool. It's infinite gold, right? Who doesn't want infinite gold? Judging by the amount of people using the exploits for the relics from the last patch, I think plenty of people like infinite gold. But in this circumstance, it's just not worth giving up the early game pressure. I think Feudal to Castle Age is genuinely like the most important area of the game right now. Imperial Age can be like the decisive hammer to smash a game into pieces and end it. Dark Age doesn't really have that much of credence anymore, right? Like, we've kind of screwed over Ram Rushes a little bit. It's not as viable of a strategy anymore. So it really comes down to that Feudal to Castle Age timing. And I think people cracking Castle Age is important. And I think you're looking to end the game around there. So you want to guard yourself against being like vulnerable as you build up into that. And you don't want to give any like, squishy underbelly to be struck at, such as a caravan line. And that's exactly what Magic will not provide to his opponent, because he has gone quickly into the second TC after being delayed to the second age. Something that Kasva is not matching him on, by the way. Did not move onto the stone at all. In fact, does he even know where his stone is? Okay, he did scout it out. It's fairly far away. Probably feels a little bit dangerous to go for. But pressure already coming out as Kasva is cycling a knight through. He scouts out what's happening here. Walls are going down to protect the wood line in the meantime. But this one raw knight, this one measly raw knight will not be able to do enough on his own. It looks like he maybe sniped, one villager. That would have been the cycle in charge with the follow-up damage. Remember, you get the lance attack, the initial melee, and then you also get your bonus damage for 3 seconds after that. So that's how you're able, with one knight, by the way, to strike out a villager. Something that no other Civ can brag about as easily. It's like you go in, you strike again, and pretty done. It's fairly easy for them to do this. I will say it's not as busted as it would be if Knights had one more damage, which of course you could get. And I think that's usually what we see, is usually you can get that blacksmith right, you get the melee tech. And then what that allows you to do is you charge in, you smash in, and then you do one club with the sword, and that should kill a villager. That's where it gets really dirty. Yeah, now Kasva's got problems, right? Do I try and eco to match, or do I now try and ramp up the pressure? And it looks like his answer is pressure. So he starts building more Knights, 3 on the field right now. And he's cut off all the expansion points, right? Because Magic still refuses to build any military presence. He's all in on the villager count. So he has to play a very tight economy, and that means he only has access to stone, wood, and food. He cannot access his gold anymore. And that's going to be a problem. Because although you have this kind of eco-booming factor, unless you can reach those gold lines, you're not going to be able to actually convert that into a tech advantage. And that's why he drops the racks. I like this move. I think in this type of map, especially with the amount of choke points, it's very easy to kind of pin in and push away the Night Rush. If this was some like Dry Arabia, it'd be a little bit more problematic for Magic with this type of opening. But yeah, I think he can recover from here. And all the while back in base. Second stable. So yeah, now he's going School Cavalry plus stable, and he is getting the Chivalry. So definitely looking to ramp up that pressure. He wants to close this game out before Castle Age is even on the table. The problem is it's a double racks drop. You're going to be in trouble very quickly. And I feel like now this investment by Magic isn't that bad to have gone double racks, considering your opponent invested in a stable as well and continues to just churn out those Knights, right? So you actually feel a lot better about this choice now. And you definitely feel it's the right one when you see 6 Knights turning up in your base like this. It means that Kasva's economy is just not scaling. It's not built to do so. Whereas in the next 4 or 5 minutes, Magic is going to vastly, outscale Kasva, right? Like, if you look at the eco count already, 36 to the 32, and that's after having 1 or 2 villagers sniped out as well. It's just going to keep increasing. Kasva. There's still a way in the back here. Magic hasn't walled this off. I think mainly the reasoning is, this wood line is not going to last long, in his opinion, right? Like, if you actually think about how many people he's got working this, it's a crazy amount. 24 people on wood right now. Because he can't put them on gold, right? So he's just trying to double up that resource. And that'll provide him the required resources to then go wall wherever he needs to. Especially when he's doing these kind of short walls, right? Like, he's not getting the best value. Because remember, the way that Palisade walls work is you have the initial cost, you can see there, 15, and then each additional section is 5. It's something that's quite often overlooked. So drawing longer walls in one go will actually save you instead of, these smaller walls, right? Where he's just turned direction each time. 8 Knights now. And this flanking attack will do a lot of damage to Magic's economy. His spearmen are not in position for this either. And he's walling this side, so he's going to get caught off guard. Magic doesn't see this coming at all either. And there's so many villagers here. You're going to lose maybe 5, 6, possibly 7 of them. Here they come, charging in. Trying for the garrison. 1 gets sniped out, 2 free. 5, nope, 4. Okay, he cuts it at 4. He's getting the rest to the main TC, but that's going to leave a few behind, So far, the count is 6, I believe, 7, and then he'll get out. Maybe he loses 1 or 2 Knights for this, but it's definitely worth it. He needs to put a dent into Magic's economy before he outscales him on this double TC. And now, when you look at Kasva, 37, Magic 38. Kasva is keeping him in check. This would be a great time for Kasva to try and boom himself, but he just seems to have no interest in it at all. At least from a TC perspective. He is setting up for great goal gains, right? Like, it's up to 500 being generated. At any stage, he could slow down the Knight Treacle and look for Castle Age. I just don't think he's interested in that, right? He's up to 11 Knights now. His opponent is still just not building a big enough military to dissuade him. and he still hasn't walled himself in. So you actually have a lot of plays still to make onto his economy. I do like that Magic has now identified the importance of sticking spears here, though. That was his critical error. There was no reason to stick the spears over here to guard this one villager. I think, like, honestly, if you're being attacked from this direction, right, and you lose that one villager, whoopsie-doo, you'll still get more spears out. They can still react. But if you get wrapped on this tree line, as you just got educated in, that's where you're in Danger Town, right? Because you've got so many people on the wood lines. Yeah, this is the reason he put so many people in the wood lines, by the way. It's just all about getting the initial economy to support the farm production, right? And now Kasva, he's going to struggle to put a dent in, right? Like Magic, you can see his food income is fantastic, wood income as well. Gold is suffering because he still hasn't gone off to that line. But the whole point is that he's going to boom up to a point where he can just rush out. He can definitely easily protect it. And then he'll have double the amount of workers on a gold line compared to Kasva. That's what he's aiming for. Yeah. Kasva's going to get the bad news in a sec. So this has been walled. Yes, you can burn it down. You'll get through at a decent pace with 11 Knights. The problem is the delay on you getting through is long enough that the spears will move in. Which is why I think Kasva will just identify that it's there and then move away. Okay, now he's actually going to go for the burn. So spears should be reacting. Oh no, Magic! He ran them out of the field. Oh, this is not good. Well, at least he has the heads up, so he'll be able to pull his people back. But this is not a good situation to find yourselves in, folks. And he will start to repair. 3 should be enough to keep this up long enough that spears get in place. But it is eventually going to go down. So he starts to back off now. One more volley will get through. So Spearman needs to stunt this move in. And it's going to be enough to push Kasva out. As soon as he sees the spears, he'll back up for the moment. Although, a little bit of wonky play from Magic. So Kasva, it will snipe one of those out, but we'll have to back away from the superior number of spears. Remember, they are incredibly lethal right now. They got their bonus damage against cavalry buffed up to 20. So 29 damage per poke. Quite an effective unit when you consider the Royal Knights on their lance attack get 30, and then they go down to less than that. So, very scary situation for the Knights. But all this was the ruse to allow Kasva to get that tech up we were expecting. He did boom in the end. Makes sense, right? He stopped at that 11 Knight count. He didn't go beyond it, or 12 rather. And now he's moving in, keeping his opponent off the goal line. We talked about Magic wanting to do this. Look how many villagers he had here trying to get on that goal. Kasva, he can actually expend these Knights and it doesn't matter. As long as he delays Magic getting on that gold line by another 2-3 minutes, well, that's maybe a jump of the gun. Maybe a minute and a half. I think you're happy with that. Because right now, the only way that Magic can win this game is if he gets into castle within the next 3 minutes. Otherwise, the quality units coming out will just completely outclass him. And you can see they've already been teched up to veteran Royal Knights now. So more bulky, hell of a lot more damage, and a hell of a lot of more pain to throw Magic's way. And you can see he's hesitant to even bring the villagers out. So he moves them back to the wood line, continues just up in the wood production, and then he's going to wall this off before moving on to the gold vein. He did not go for a marketplace, which is quite the big surprise. So the reason the marketplace would have been fantastic. If you got this many people working on wood, you could have traded for the gold, right? But no dice. And now the Knight's moving in, sniping them out so easily. And he's not getting them in the TC. He's going to move them out now, but this small trickle of Knights caught him off guard because he didn't see a big splash of red dots on the map. So these Knights overall, reasonable value gained. Sniped out, what, 4, 5, maybe 6 of these villagers? And he needs to do this, right? Once again, it comes back to the fact that his opponent is double TC and he's still on 1. And even after all that, Magic with an 8 villager advantage. And now, switching in the stables, prepping for a situation probably where he wants to go into the Royal Knights. But he does need to get that tech up first. And once again, the villager line is exposed. Kasva. He just dances around these spears. Yes, they're powerful, they can stay on top of you, but when they're being pulled left, right, and center in their own base, they are ineffective. And you can see the quality coming into effect now, right? Hardened Spearmen versus the veteran Royal Knights. Even after the buffs, you're not going to win this matchup. And you're not meant to. It would be stupid if you did, right? Your opponent went castle, you're still sticking in feudal. So overall, decent trades. Of course, every single Knight loss is more costly for Kasva. He'll get a few of them out and lose the rest. But once again, just stun that growth. Magic now at 54, and they are matched on the village count. And Magic looking to get even more greedy. He expands to the southeast with a TC drop, something that I don't think Kasva's ever going to spot. Because he keeps, like, this is the cool thing, right? Actually, this is so big brain. So Magic, he leaves this opening at the front of his base. He doesn't wall himself in entirely. So actually, Kasva's logic is it's actually more efficient, even though if he knows he's coming, to run through the centerpiece, right? Because he's going to assume the backside is walled now, right? And it would have been stupid to wall this off anyway, fully, because you're going to get rid of the natural defense of the wood line in the end anyway. And it's actually going to be 4 TC. What? Okay, Magic, this is insanely greedy, but I guess, you know what, folks? If you've got the wood, which he definitely has been getting plenty of with over 20 people at all times, and you've got the stone, then show that you've got the stones to be a greedy eco-boomer with 4 town centers at 15 minutes as France. Wow. Kasva, the dent he's going to have to put on Magic is going to have to be huge. And he's pushing it now. Only 2 spearmen here. And I don't know where the spearman army went right now. Did they get decimated? I think they got wiped. Wow, did they chase across? They must have chased across. So Kasva just in on the lines. A lot of eco-harassment going to happen here. Magic failing to defend himself appropriately and keep the barracks just churning out the spearmen quick enough. Even with the additional racks, it doesn't seem good enough right now. So everyone's just garried up. Magic down to 50. Kasva now up to 60 villagers. This was looking so good for Magic, but it just seems like he just doesn't care about his village anymore. He's like, okay, you know what? I got 4 TCs. What do I care if they die? I'll just replace them like that, okay? That's the way this works. At this rate, we're going to need a one-child policy here in France. So he loses a decent amount of workers. Kasva's going to be feeling confident, but because he didn't scout out this double TC expansion, this will be replaced very quickly. The problem that Magic has is all of this is for nothing at this rate, because remember, he's still sitting down in Feudal. Kasva, meanwhile, in Castle now makes the transition to Man-at-Arms, right? And 2 Raxes will outclass the 4 Rax production of Spearmen coming out of Magic. What the hell is this? Magic is going to 5 TCs. I just, guys... Maybe these resources would be better spent defending your existing villages. That's all I'm saying, right? Instead of just, like, getting them back on the line so that you can get additional TCs to replace them. Maybe if he just kept them alive longer, he wouldn't need 5 TCs. Maybe if with one of these 5 TCs, he researched textiles, he probably wouldn't be losing as many villages to these raids as he is. There's so many maybes. It's like a what-if series from Disney. And the what-ifs that lead to Magic winning this, they're hard to write. They're hard to script without them just seeming forced, right? Because Kasva is in full control of this. Make no mistake. And now with armored soldiers on horseback and on foot, he will move in and spot out these TC expansions. These TC expansions, which, by the way, you've been churning out the villagers so quickly, you don't have room for them to be safe. And, you know, this whole concept is great as long as the villagers are actually gathering for you. Otherwise, it's pointless. And here you go. Spearmen engaging on the Man-at-Arms. Man-at-Arms just not counted right now. And what do the Knights do? They ignore the spear problem and they chase straight onto the villager line and move away before the spears arrive. And the treacle continues. And I think Magic's just kind of done here. He missed his window. He really needed to get onto the gold line. He really needed the tech up. It's kind of surprising that when he had this many TCs, he couldn't actually keep the productions up. But it's that harassment on his eco lines, right? If he'd have protected that initial 2 TC expansion correctly, just by churning out spears perma, I think he has enough to keep the Knights at bay, and then I can actually get behind this triple, quadruple, penta CC drop, but not this way. This was not the way to do it. And as a result, it just seems like Magic's given up. He's not even moving a lot of his units anymore. When you're forced to try and counter Man-at-Arms with horsemen, especially even more so after the patch, that's when you just know the game is done. Really well played by Kasva, though. I love the harassment coming out. We said we're not necessarily expecting someone to double down on the Royal Knights as frequently in the early game because, of course, Spearmen are stronger. But Magic just way too greedy with the way he opened this up. I like the idea of the second TC so fast. I just didn't like the pace at which he was pushing out military units. And as a result, Kasva will take the game.